Hello there. This video is going to serve as your quick start guide to TextMesh Pro. In this video, we're going to go over three things. We're going to go over the package configuration for TextMesh Pro. We're going to go over how to create some TextMesh Pro objects, and then we're going to look at how to create a custom font asset. Now, I'm not going to go into much depth into each of those sections as there are separate videos for each of those, but I'll just cover the basics so you know your way around. So let's get going. So first thing first is I created an empty project and I imported TextMesh Pro. Now once the package is installed, everything is self-contained into the TextMesh Pro folder. Inside of there, if we take a look, we've got our editor scripts. We've got our examples and everything that's needed to make the examples work. So from objects to materials, scenes, scripts, and textures. Once you're familiar with TextMesh Pro, should you need extra space, it's not like that takes that much space, but should you need it, you could always delete the example stuff. Then we got gizmos, GUI skins, our plugins, which are used for the font asset creator. Inside the resources folder, we've got our fonts, which is basically our custom font assets, materials derived from that, as well as the TTF that was used to create those. And we've got our shaders, which are right there. Then we got our scripts, and then we got our user guide. Cool, let's move on. So how do we create a TextMesh Pro object? Well, there's different ways. First one is I can go to create and say TextMesh Pro. Let's get this object centered here. So it creates a text object. It pre-populates the text input field, then hello world is what shows up. And if I wanted, I could change the font asset, change the font color, whatever stuff. There's separate videos that will go over all these other options. So take a look at those separately. But, font size changes font size and line justification, from left, right, center. They're pretty self-explanatory, at least should be. Next way to create a TextMesh Pro object, instead of using create there, I can go to game object, create other, TextMesh Pro, same thing, hello world. Cool. Next way is I could create an empty game object like this. Go here, add component, and say type mesh, TextMesh Pro, and now we have a new one. Now this one, the text field box is not pre-populated, but we could say example of some text. And same thing, let me center it so we can see it. And here we go. So it's pretty simple to create the object, do that. How do you change the font? Well, you just go here, pick whichever font you want. So this is an example of the font style that we're using for TextMesh Pro for the logo, and it's using the normal distance field shader, which has tons of options like bevel, lighting, bump mapping, glow, and all that stuff, and underlay, which is used to create that shadow right underneath if you look at it here. Okay, cool. Let's move on. How do we create a new custom font asset? Let me get rid of the object so we're not distracted. So to create a new font asset, it's pretty straightforward. Go to Windows, TextMesh Pro Font Asset Creator. This window will pop up. In the font source, you're going to pick your font. This is your TTF. So you'll pick whichever TTF you wanted. Let's pick the Snapit just for fun. Then at this point, there's a video that goes over every single option here. I'm not gonna go over all of these in this video, but what I typically do whenever I create a new font, I pick the font. I don't change any settings. I hit Generate Font Atlas. This allows me to preview the font. In my cases, I want a sign distance field font. This is not it because I have to pick SDF here, distance field 16 or 32. So why am I generating into smooth? The reason why I'm doing this is often when you get some of the fonts through different websites and they're free, they can be missing characters, they can be incomplete, they can look different than how you expected it. So I like to just hit quick generate here to see what I'm looking at, and if it looks good, then I'll go back and do some tweaks if I need to. So quick comments about the things that matter. I always use auto sizing. We're trying to maximize the space and get every character as big as we can. So auto sizing, that's its job. Padding is the space between the characters, but when we're using sign distance field like 16 or 32, padding becomes the spread. The spread basically is how much range your glow offset, how much range on your distance you're going to get for how thick the border can be, and so on and so forth. This is a rough description of it, but basically 5 is great for pretty much anything. Should you feel like you need more range on your glow offset or whatever, you could move up to 8. If you were to use bevel and you wanted like thicker stuff, you could increase it again to 7 or 8, but you'll never really go over 10 or something of that nature. So by default, 5's great. And the reason I say that is I've seen some users push that up to 32, which is just ridiculous. You don't need that. It's insane. So 5, 7, 9, whatever is good enough for pretty much anything. Atlas resolution, simple fonts, Arial, rounded like fonts without sharp edges, unlike this font here. You can usually get away with a 256 by 256. Fonts like these, for the bulk of any font, 512 is perfect. Now, there are some fonts that are, they have a pattern in them or things of that nature. You may want to increase the Atlas resolution. Or, in this case, I'm trying to fit in the ASCII set, which has 95 characters. Well, if I wanted to render like 500 characters, well, that's where I would increase the Atlas size. ASCII set, there's different options here to pick what you're trying to raster. And that's basically it. I never play with font style here. But there's a video that goes over all that stuff. So at any rate, how do you get a distance fill generated? You pick your font, you don't touch anything, I preview it. Once I'm happy, I will pick SDF 32 or 16, hit generate, depending on how fast your machine is, how many cores you have. This is multi-threaded. This generates the SDF. We're going to wait for it to be generated. And once it's done, we can see here it will tell us what font was created, what point size we ended up getting, how many characters it fits, if we're happy. And just another side note, sorry, you can see this is kind of fuzzy. That's basically, in the case of a signed distance field font, we use the alpha channel to represent distance. So this is why it looks kind of fuzzy. But this is a perfectly well-generated signed distance field. Once I'm happy, hit save font. Because it's SDF, it will add the SDF at the end of the name of the font. And if I'm good with that, I just hit save and we're done. This case, I don't want to override the one that I had, so I won't do it. But that's essentially how you generate a signed distance field font atlas. Once it's generated, again, I recommend you keep the stuff in a resource folder. Once it's there, in the case of Snapit, it would show up here. When you select it, you get some, there's the custom inspector for the font asset. And inside of that, you're going to see basically the line spacing, what it is, where the underline is located, what sub-assets have been associated with it. You can define, let me expand this window here a little bit. You can define how bold is bold and what's the weight for normal. You can define the italic slant. This is where all the characters are in their UVs and all this information. You don't need to go play in there, but that's there anyway. And then your kerning table, this is where you would enter and add new kerning tables. So that's basically it for this quick guide video. It actually went a little bit longer than I wanted. I guess I added more stuff, but hopefully it covered all the basics. Like I said, there's other videos that cover more information, so take a look at those. Should you have any questions, please feel free to post. And more importantly, thank you for your interest in TextMesh Pro, and thank you for watching.